And so I know you had kind of mentioned, and we've kind of talked about this, and, as a 501c3, IPT's role is not to, to lobby, whatnot. That's a no-no. So any IRS examiner out there, that is not what they do. We are affirmatively stating that. Um, but, you've how do you determine, or do you determine just to either get involved in a case, or again, not lobby, but kind of throw out your knowledge base or kind of the weight behind what the institution needs?
So the best example of that would be the amicus brief request that will come through. So we do have a process for that. So by being a friend of the court per se, we're not really taking a position in terms of advocating for a law change or a case or whatever the case or whatever it may be. But we can kind of throw our weight behind that, saying we support the taxpayer in whatever case it may be. So the way the process works for us is that we have a legal committee, right? And the legal committee takes on those requests that come in, and there's a whole litany of requirements before they'll actually take a look at it, and they'll make a recommendation to the board of governors about whether it should get behind it or not. And there's some things that, like there's a 45-day minimum rule that they have. Obviously, they just need time to look at it. So we may pass on a case because somebody who's asked for a request didn't give the legal committee enough time to evaluate the case. It's not that we were opposed to it; we just didn't have time to evaluate it. And then the legal committee will make a decision whether that's in the best interest of the organization as a whole. It may be in the best interest of the requester, but it may not be in the best interest of other IPT members. So, on its face, it may sound like it's a good thing to get behind, but if it's not to the benefit of the majority of the members, they're not going to do it. So there's a lot of things that go into the process. It's not a slam dunk per se.
And then when they do it, it's a volunteer effort to draft that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
IPT doesn't have the resources to hire counsel. So, and often they come to the table with something prepared.
Okay.
So that's about as far as we get into the advocacy, if you will. And it's not really an advocate role at all. We're just supporting our members in that regard.
Okay.
Well, and so how would you say, there's, other state tax organizations out there, right? So how would you say that IPT is different than some of those organizations? Are, cost, for example, the Council of State Taxation, does IPT view them as a competitor? Are we all just trying to put out, information and resources and build community around state and local tax?
Yeah, no, to a certain extent, we don't consider IPT to be a competitor of cost. And I hope they would do the same. At the end of the day, I mean, we both have the same objectives. We want to make sure
Right.
that there's fair and uniform tax administration across the board. Now, how you go about it are maybe two different tracks, and maybe they have a different track than IPT has. We're focused on education, and they do education as well, of course, but they're also advocates. So that's fine. But at the end of the day, you have to understand there's just this one pool, this one bag of money that is going to get spent. And we hope that, well, you spend your money with us, they hope that they spend the money with them. So it's really what you choose. It kind of reminds me when I was a kid, growing up in a very humble home, is that we had one cereal. I like to go back to cereal because I worked for a cereal company and say,
Fair.
my mother would open up the cupboard and say, okay, this is what you're having. This is your cereal. We didn't have a choice, right? That's what it is. And it's kind of that way, now. So, we know our members, typically they may be told you can go to one program this year. That's it.
Right.
You decide which one you're going to. And so, obviously we hope they go to our program. Well, we know that, there's value in other organizations as well. They have to pick what's best for them. But we try to create programs that will satisfy them to the best of their expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. And we take the feedback each time and try to evolve and modify our content to meet the needs of the community. And I know like the annual meeting probably has the largest attendee, would you say, group of attendees, or no?
No, sales tax symposium is the largest.
Wow. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
I feel like years ago I went to it in Huntington Beach, and I feel like there were thousands of people there. Was there ever that many, or is that just a mismemory on my part?
Well, it might be a mismemory on your part, but I think there seems like there's a lot of people there because it's not just the registrants that are there. If they bring their families, so
Yeah.
now you got spouses and you got kids, and the
Yeah.
hotel is really busy and it's full, and like it all seems like a lot of IPT people. But
Yeah, because I could
yeah,
just remember going to things like, wow, there are a lot of people here. Yeah, but then, with COVID and things like that, some things had tapered, and it's nice to see people back. I remember being in Austin a few years ago, if that was 2021, 2022, I'm not sure. And it was when the Delta strain was coming out, and we're all there, and I'm like, ah, but it was lovely to see people again. And Jordan Goodman went and were you there when he did the hand thing? I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
I miss people.
yeah,
That was awesome.
yeah. That's something you wish you had recorded. You can play
I
again. So.
know. That was magic. It was
No,
just magic.
No,
Like,
no,
no.
Meredith says no.
no, he is such a
We have
funny
something
guy.
recorded.
We
We
have
have the
had
very first
Jordan on. Yeah. Him and
well,
Professor
no,
Funk.
we've had the very first podcast recorded, and I've listened to it, and it's dreadful. Like, it's as, like, someone who's speaking to it and has, we've done since what, 80 something episodes. It's like, no, I don't want to go back and witness that. That was heart of COVID sitting on the floor of my kids' room while they were allowed to be in daycare. So no, thank you.
Uh,
Uh,
so, what was the cereal you had in your house?
Probably what was it? Whatever was on sale that week.
Okay. Because we had Cheerios. So, not Honey
Yeah,
Nut, Cheerios. I don't think Honey Nut
yeah.
existed. And I always wanted Captain Crunch and Fruit Loops. And I'm a major, maybe get those. And I don't know if that might be Kellogg's. So, it might have been a competition, right?
Yeah, right. Well, generally no sugared cereal. So I mean, because
Yeah.
obviously those are more expensive.
Yep. And my mom wouldn't buy them, but only on a rare occasion with a lot of begging.
Yeah, right, right.
well, and we wouldn't want to not talk about the CMI, right? So the certified member of the institute designation is kind of a hallmark of IPT. Can you walk us through about how the CMI program kind of came to be, why it's important, why the test is so hard?
Yeah,
Kind
it's
of
hard.
walk us through the CMI, like kind of the CMI in
It's
general.
got some street cred, I'll tell you that. As someone who's a lawyer and a CPA, it's a good test.
Yeah,
I was impressed.
yeah. So the CMI actually started when IPT started, the Institute for Professional Taxation. So at that time, property tax folks on the corporate side tended to go to IAAO, the International Association of Assessing Officers annual conference. So you'd have the assessors there, and then you'd have all the property tax people. And so when they decided that the corporate property tax people really need to have their own organization, they created IPT. But they also recognized that IAAO has very good designations. We need to have one that kind of reflects who we are, and so that's how the CMI in property tax was developed.
Wow.
And the founding fathers said, it basically has to reflect education, it has to reflect experience, and it has to reflect the accomplishment of testing. And so once it got established within property tax, and then as IPT expanded into the other disciplines, it just made sense to have designations in those disciplines as well. And today, those designations are recognized across the board as
Hmm.
something, not maybe, I don't want to offend anybody CPAs, but it's kind of on that same level, if you
Hmm.
will.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, it the CMI, and I should say CMI/CCIP, because the CCIP is the equivalent in the credits and incentives. It carries the same weight as the CMI. Um, we say that it's a little bit different from the CPA exam that we require experience. You have to have
Hmm.
5 years of experience before you can take the exam,
Mm.
and CPAs do not. It was at 6 months or 9 months. I give my daughter a hard time. My daughter's a CPA, and I tell her, "Why? You got that before you even had the experience." She's like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Kate had."
Interesting.
And as a lawyer, you can take the bar exam, what,
Oh,
two
and you
months
don't
after.
even know how to be a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah. So it doesn't require the experience.
Yeah.
So we like to say the CMI kind of distinguishes us from other designations, and that we do
Okay.
require the experience.
Interesting. Well, I felt like it was at Deloitte anyway, and maybe, but I don't think. At PW, I was still a senior. I left, and I was a manager at Deloitte. And I remember there was a decision because we kept hiring a lot of people, non-traditional hires, right, to get good experience in sooner, not grow them from the beginning up. And that was the pivot when state and local became more of a national practice. That was the way it was at PW, and then Deloitte was doing the same when I joined them. That was like a national practice, locally housed, and we had a lot of non-traditional hires, and they weren't CPAs, but they were subject matter experts. And so where are you going to get them in the slate? And then, of course, hiring attorneys. If you're not a CPA and you're a CPA firm, where do you give them a place for advancement? So the CMI was a way that they recognized to get people to elevate. So there was a requirement in order to have the upper designation at one point to have to take the CMI. So we definitely put that constraint on employees to elevate them, motivate them to get credentialed in their way. And it gave them an opportunity without being a CPA to advance in the organization. So I know they came up with like the director title, the principal title versus partner, and it allowed people that are subject matter experts to stay within the organization. So I know it gave some credit to Deloitte anyway, because it was a constraint for a long time and a path to upper advancement, honestly, rather than being a non CPA, because you're finance. So you're not a CPA, right? You're not qualified unless you do something else.
Right. Well, yeah. So I think most of the firms do require, not require, but they will allow the CMI as
Yep.
the designation that gets them to the managerial level,
Yep.
I believe. I
Yep.
can't speak for them directly because I've never been in direct contact with them and telling this. This is
Yeah, I
what I
don't
hear
even know.
from
I've
folks.
been gone for a long time, but I know that used to be an issue. It was like it was a bone of contention. I remember when I came in, because I was not a CPA, even though I could have sat, I didn't. I was a lawyer, but it was like, I'm in a CPA organization. I need to become a CPA. Like, I can't just be a lawyer, right? And then we hired a bunch of lawyers, and lawyers changed the character of the big four or big eight or whatever we were at the time. Like, then they wanted lawyers. But at the time, they didn't really want lawyers. Like, as they evolved as an organization, they're like, we need these people with these subject matter competencies. And so they didn't always have a direct path in accounting to tax, as you didn't either. You're finance, real estate. That's not tax, like
Right,
you said.
right.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's why I know we cared about that when I was at Deloitte. I don't know how much they still do, but I know it's important. And I know the exam is amazingly difficult and it has value.
I know when I got my CMI and I was in the corporate tax department, I did get recognized for doing that, just in the same
Okay.
manner that others did when they got their CPA. So I
Yeah.
know it's not just the advocacy firms, but also corporations are recognizing the CMI as well.
Yeah.
And it is a tough test. There's two components to it, right? There's the written component, and then
Hmm.
there's the oral. It's a tough exam in each of the disciplines. It's hard, and I can't share the pass rate because we're just not allowed to do that.
Oh,
But
okay.
but for the written exam, it's a 5 hour exam,
Hmm.
and most people take the full 5 hours. So
Yep.
um,
No, I was shocked how hard it was. I'm like, oh my gosh. And what I learned, because I did not pass the written, so I have to retake it. I passed the oral, so I haven't gotten it myself because I don't remember the cases and the standards. It's like when I came to the conclusion, I was like, man, I got a lot of respect for this exam. I got the opportunity to take it. I think it was great to do that for my own personal understanding, but it really does give you the tenets and which these rules are based upon. And if you don't understand the history, you don't understand how the laws got from here to there. And I think that's super important. So I think that legitimizes it in my mind. And I would value that with an employee hire if they weren't a traditional CPA. I would say, you got something because you did a CMI. That has some value to me. So it taught me, as someone who was like, well, I don't need these extra things, how valuable that knowledge was. So kudos to the organization for having that. It really is a big deal. And I think it teaches people important stuff, honestly, that helps them build their career.
right.
So I think it's a really valuable exercise to go through.
Right. And I think there is a misunderstanding. People that want to take the exam, they think, well, I'll take the schools and that should be enough. Well, the schools
Hmm.
are not prep courses. That's kind of the
No.
basis of the CMI. If you're going to be a well-rounded professional in that particular discipline, and you're going to be designated, you have to be more than book smart. You got to have some experience behind you, and hopefully, you have credible experience that's going to help you with that exam.
Yeah. Well, the verbal was, easy for me because I've been practicing a long time. I'm like da 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 da. Da. So it was a written where I was like, ooh, I don't remember some of this. And it really taught me a little slap on the wrist to say, you should learn your history. You've
Yeah.
forgotten that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. And I would never say that the oral is easier, but the oral is testing a little
Oh, I
bit
didn't think
different
it was
areas.
easy. It's just the practical. It's the practical.
Right.
It's where the experience really weighs in
Right.
of understanding. If you don't have experience, you're not going to be able to do the written, the oral at all. No way.
Right.
Because it's a
Right.
fact pattern that's very convoluted, and you're like, how do I solve this problems?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
no, it was difficult. Agreed.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just not taking that fact pattern, but you have to present that fact pattern
Hmm.
to the committee. So that's, I think that often gets lost on the
Oh
applicants
yeah,
thinking, well, I know the content and I know the fact pattern, but wait, there's this third component is you have to present your position to
correct.
this panel of committee members. So
Yeah, no, I thought it was phenomenal.
Because as a practitioner, as internal person, you're just not gonna sit at a desk and be like, "Okay, I know the answer.
Mm-mm.
That's
yep,
it."
You never
Like, and
do. Yeah.
take you
right,
nowhere, like,
right,
right? Like, that research has to go somewhere, you have to communicate it in some form or fashion, so I think it's a very when you talk about the CMI that you have to have 5 years of experience to even take the thing, that is a large component of what our job is, communicating our results,
mhm,
good,
Right.
bad, or ugly, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's admirable that the test acknowledges that skill set and that is
Hmm.
part of how you're judged on, you know, the that credential.
yep,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
For
No,
sure.
it's really good. Really, really, really good.
And so Chris, as we wrap up, is there something about IPT that you want our listeners to know that we maybe haven't touched on other than to make sure that you're a member to join?
Well, we just recently engaged in a rebranding of the organization. So if you go to the website, you'll see it's much different than it was before. And people don't realize this until you tell them. If you look at the logo has changed. You remember the old logo with
So
the
funny. I was wondering. Yeah.
with the balance? What do they call that? The symbol of the
It's like the scales of
It's like
justice.
the
scales
scale,
adjusted.
yeah.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, those are gone. So it's been rebranded. And part of this has been that we recognize that our membership basis is changing. So the younger folks are coming up, and we tell them this is going to be your organization someday. This is not the people who are leading the organization today. So there's a big initiative now to get younger folks involved in the organization, and there's multiple ways of doing that. You can serve on committees. There's always some room for a committee member somewhere. Um, the corporate people, we don't know they have challenges in travel, but we're always looking for corporate people. So we need that
Hmm.
perspective at
We
our
do.
programs.
Yes.
And if you're a corporate speaker, your registration fee is waived. So that's a big chunk of money that's gonna benefit you, right?
Hmm.
So get involved in the organization. That's our biggest push right now because obviously we're all aging. We're getting older, we're getting
I
grayer, and
color my hair.
I'm still 27 in my head.
But my
That's
gray
my
doesn't
magic
really
number.
show. I have very little gray.
so so we really want younger folks to get involved in the
Yeah.
organization. We have a subcommittee now. It's called the Emerging Leaders, and it sort of was young professionals, but it doesn't have to be young professionals. It has to be anybody who's new to the organization that
Hmm.
wants to have an impact on where the future of the organization is.
All right, Chris, well, thank you so much. We do really appreciate the organization. We are participants, we are members, we are teachers, we are speakers. We enjoy that time to get together. And so thank you for your work with IPT. And this has been SALTovation. Till next time.